I got home around 7 in the evening. The hallway was steeped in silence, thick and unnatural, as if the building itself were holding its breath. The dim overhead light flickered, casting long, twitching shadows across the cracked tiles. My footsteps echoed as I approached my apartment and stopped cold. The door was ajar, just slightly, no more than a sliver, but enough. I always lock it, always. It's a ritual, like brushing my teeth or checking the stove twice. But tonight, there it was. Slightly open, like an invitation. Or a warning. A faint scent drifted out. Something sweet, cloying, lavender, maybe. But mixed with something else. Something metallic. The kind of smell that makes your instincts tighten in your chest before your mind even catches up. I hesitated, one hand reaching for the handle, the other still clutching my keys. My pulse had begun to thrum in my ears, loud against the silence. The door creaked as I nudged it open further. Darkness yawned beyond the threshold, heavy, expectant. It felt like stepping into a dream I couldn't remember, or a memory I'd tried to forget. The smell wafting out from inside was sweet, almost suffocating. Lavender, unmistakable, too clean, too calm, but laced with something else. Something sharper, metallic, like blood left too long in a warm room. I hesitated at the threshold, my hand still resting on the doorknob, the chill of the brass biting into my skin. The scent clung to the air like a memory that refused to fade. I stepped in slowly. The air was thick, heavy, unmoving, like the breath had been pulled from the room and never returned. It was the kind of silence that hums beneath your skin, too quiet to hear, but impossible to ignore. The light inside was dim, filtered through curtains I didn't remember closing. Dust floated in the beams like ash. Each step felt muffled, like the floor itself had forgotten how to echo. And with every breath I took, the scent grew stronger, syrupy and cold, like perfume masking something far worse. It didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt like I had stepped into a version of it where time had stopped. And something had been waiting for me to open the door. On the couch, she was there. A woman, still as a portrait. Her hair was pinned up in an old-fashioned style, the kind you'd see in faded photographs from decades ago. She wore light linen clothes, elegant but slightly worn at the edges, like something preserved too long in a forgotten closet. Her hands rested neatly on her lap, unmoving. But her eyes locked onto mine the moment I stepped into the room. They didn't just look at me. They knew me, saw through me. Like she was reading pages I didn't remember writing. "Hi, love," she said. The words were soft, familiar, but coated with something that made my skin tighten. Not fear exactly, but recognition twisted into something uncanny. She smiled, just barely, as if even that expression had been saved just for this moment. There was no surprise in her face, no confusion, only ... expectation, as if she'd been waiting for me for years. And somehow, I felt it too, that impossible sense of unfinished time, of something left open. A question asked long ago and never answered. The room was quiet, but the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with everything we weren't saying. And as I stood there, frozen, the strangest part wasn't that I didn't know her. It was that a part of me deep, buried, aching, felt like I did. I froze. That voice, it sounded familiar. Not in the way you recognize a friend or a song on the radio, but deeper, older, like something heard once in a dream or whispered in the dark between sleep and waking. It pulled at something buried, a flicker of warmth wrapped in static, distorted by time. A childhood memory, maybe, one I couldn't quite place, one that shouldn't be here. Not now, not in this room. My throat was dry, words scraping out like rust. "You ... who are you?" She didn't blink. didn't flinch. Just sat there, hands folded in her lap, her eyes steady on mine, like she'd been rehearsing this moment in silence. Like she'd known exactly when I'd come back, even when I didn't. Her presence filled the room in a way I couldn't explain. Heavy, almost sacred, like a secret that had waited too long to be spoken. The air felt too still. The ticking clock in the hallway had stopped, I realized, though I hadn't noticed when. A faint smile touched her lips, and something in me recoiled from the familiarity of it. Because deep down, past logic and memory, past reason and doubt, I think I already knew. And that terrified me more than any stranger ever could. "I'm your wife, darling," she replied, with a restrained smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a smile carefully constructed, like something worn too many times. Not fake, exactly ... but fragile, as if it would crack if I looked at it too hard. Her voice was soft, melodic, with a warmth that felt rehearsed, like she'd said those words 100 times before. Like she knew exactly how I'd react, because I always did. "You always forget during the first few days," she continued, tilting her head just slightly, like a nurse explaining a condition to a confused patient. "It's part of it." "Part of what?" I wanted to ask, but the words tangled in my throat. I could feel my heart pounding, not from fear, exactly, but from the sheer dissonance of the moment. My brain was screaming that none of this made sense, but my body remembered something, something faint and unnameable, like the ghost of a dream I'd had every night and forgotten every morning. I looked at her again, really looked, the delicate line of her jaw, the way her hands were folded just so, the scent of lavender lingering in the air around her like it belonged to her skin. And the worst part? Some part of me, some deep broken part, wanted to believe her. My stomach turned. A cold, sinking feeling settled deep in my gut, the kind that twists you from the inside out, because I knew the truth, or at least I thought I did. I was never married, never even lived with anyone. Yet here, in this room that was supposed to be mine, everything was telling a different story. I looked around, eyes darting over the details, like a detective piecing together a puzzle that didn't fit. On the shelf, a black and white wedding portrait caught my gaze. The kind of photo taken decades ago, with a soft focus and a faded glow around the edges. There I was, smiling. Beside her, her face calm, serene, as if this moment had been captured in time and kept safe, tucked away in a memory that wasn't mine. The image felt wrong, alien, yet impossible to ignore. How could I be standing here, staring at a life I'd never lived? And why did every fiber of my being ache with a strange, unbearable longing, as if that photo wasn't just a picture, but a reminder of something I had lost ... or forgotten? Is this some kind of joke? I murmured, my voice barely more than a breath. The absurdity of the situation hit me all at once, crashing over the fragile calm like a wave. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she got up slowly and walked toward me. There was something unnatural in the way she moved. Her feet seemed not to touch the ground, gliding silently, almost floating. But then, paradoxically, the floor creaked beneath each step, loud and sharp in the heavy silence. It was impossible. As if the laws of the world were bending just for her presence. Her eyes never left mine, calm and steady, holding a truth I couldn't grasp. I took a step back, heart pounding, caught between disbelief and something far deeper, a nameless dread that whispered I was already too far gone. And yet, I couldn't look away. "Don't worry. You'll remember in time," she said softly, reaching out to touch my face. Her hand felt cold and damp against my skin, like the chill of early morning fog. But beneath that coldness, there was something else. A strange warmth, subtle and unsettling, as if faint steam were rising from the ground through her fingertips. The contrast sent a shiver down my spine. It was both comforting and eerie at once, like a whisper of life beneath a layer of frost. Her eyes locked onto mine, steady and patient, as if she was waiting for something buried deep inside me to surface, something I had lost or forgotten long ago. I wanted to pull away, but my body stayed frozen, caught in the tension between disbelief and a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, she was telling the truth, that I could remember, and that I wasn't alone. We got married in 1963. You promised you'd never leave me, but after the fire, everything changed. Her voice faltered, breaking just for a moment, as if the weight of those words was too heavy to carry alone. The room seemed to shrink around us, the shadows growing longer and darker, swallowing the light. I could almost hear the echoes of a past long buried, laughter, tears, and the crackling roar of flames that no one wanted to remember. She stared at me, eyes shimmering with a sadness that stretched across decades, a wound that time hadn't healed. "I waited for you," she whispered, barely audible, "but you never came back." The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the ghosts of promises made and broken. And in that moment, I realized the past was still alive here, tangled in smoke, memory, and regret. I looked around again. The room felt different now, heavier, as if the very air remembered something I couldn't yet grasp. The furniture was scorched at the edges, blackened like remnants of a nightmare. The once familiar shapes now seemed warped, distorted by fire and time. The walls, they were dark with soot, stained by smoke that had settled deep into every crack and corner. A jagged crack ran from the ceiling all the way down to the baseboard, splitting the wall like a scar. It was as if the house itself had been wounded and never healed. The silence pressed in on me, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint creak of the floor beneath my feet. This wasn't just my apartment anymore. It was a graveyard of memories, and I was standing right in the middle of it. "This isn't my apartment," I whispered, my voice barely audible, swallowed by the heavy silence. And then, as if a memory was being forced open against my will, flashes hit me sudden and violent. The roaring blaze of fire licking at walls and curtains. Screams echoing through narrow hallways, raw and desperate. Thick, choking smoke curling into every corner, burning my lungs even from afar. And beneath it all, the sound of someone crying my name, a voice, fragile and broken, calling out through the chaos. I stumbled back, clutching my head as the images surged, unwilling to be ignored. The apartment, no. The place I thought I knew was a haunted stage for memories that weren't mine. Or perhaps memories I had buried deep inside. I didn't know if I was losing my mind or finally beginning to remember. Either way, there was no turning back. "You said you'd come back for me." Her voice trembled, soft but heavy with years of waiting. Her eyes, once steady and calm, now shimmered with tears, slow, glistening drops that caught the faint light like fragments of broken promises. Within that gaze, I saw something deeper, something ancient, like a longing that had festered and rotted over time, twisting into something both fragile and haunting. It wasn't just sorrow or pain. It was the weight of a hope that refused to die, even when the world around it had crumbled to ash. She wasn't just waiting for me. She was trapped in the past, a prisoner of a promise that had become a curse. And in that moment, I realized I might never be able to set her free. I ran to the hallway mirror. My breath came in ragged gasps as my eyes locked onto the glass, desperate for some kind of confirmation, some proof that I was still myself, still here. But the reflection didn't show me. Instead, it showed her, standing just behind me, always behind me, her pale face framed by that old-fashioned hairstyle, eyes gleaming with a cold, knowing smile that chilled me to the bone. The smile was slow, deliberate, as if she was sharing a secret I wasn't meant to know. I reached out, trembling, but the glass rippled like water under my fingertips. She didn't blink. She didn't move. She just watched. And I realized, with a sinking dread, that I wasn't alone in this apartment anymore. Not by a long shot. This isn't real, I said out loud, my voice shaking as I tried to convince myself. This is a dream or a mental trap. The words echoed hollowly in the silent room, bouncing off the walls like a desperate prayer. I closed my eyes, willing the nightmare to dissolve, to fade into nothingness, to wake up somewhere safe, somewhere normal. But when I opened them again, nothing had changed. The air was still thick and heavy, the shadows still clinging to every corner. Her presence lingered, just beyond my vision, like a whisper I couldn't shake. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, some cruel trick of my mind. But deep down, a cold knot of fear told me otherwise. That this, whatever this was far more real than I could bear. Maybe it's both, she replied, her voice low and calm as she stepped closer, the air between us growing heavy with unspoken truths. Her presence pressed in on me, too near to ignore, yet impossible to grasp fully, like a shadow that follows but never quite touches. But every path you take to run away, double quotes. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in the silence. Always brings you back here. The certainty in her voice was chilling, like a verdict already passed, a fate I couldn't escape, no matter how far I tried to run. I wanted to argue, to deny it all, but something deep inside me knew she was right. No matter the detours, no matter the distractions or the memories I tried to bury, this place, this moment, was where everything circled back, where the past waited, where I was trapped. I tried to open the door. My hand trembled as I turned the knob, but it wouldn't budge. The door was locked, firmly, impossibly locked. Frustrated, I crouched down and looked underneath the gap at the bottom. There, lying on the floor, was an old wedding invitation, stained with age and yellowed by time. The paper crackled softly as I reached for it. The date was printed clearly, 1963, and there, in elegant script, were two names, mine and hers, Evelyn. A chill ran down my spine as the reality pressed in around me. This wasn't just some forgotten piece of paper. It was a key, a link to a life I never lived, or thought I never did. And suddenly, the locked door wasn't just a barrier. It was a threshold I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. "You died," I said, my voice trembling, the words heavy and raw as they escaped my lips. "You died in the fire." I saw it. The room seemed to hold its breath as I spoke, the weight of truth hanging between us like a fragile glass ready to shatter. Her eyes flickered, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. Sorrow, maybe, or a distant pain. For a moment she was silent, as if searching for the right words, or perhaps for a memory long buried beneath ashes and time. I could feel the tears burning behind my own eyes, the ache of loss and confusion twisting deep inside me. Because if she had died, then what was she doing here, in my apartment, speaking to me like this? And more terrifying still, why did part of me want to believe her? Maybe I died. Maybe it was you. Or maybe neither of us ever left. Her voice was a whisper, fragile yet carrying the weight of a lifetime of secrets. She reached out her hand toward me, fingers trembling slightly, inviting but heavy with meaning. "Want to remember with me?" The offer hung in the air, like a fragile thread between two souls lost in time. A part of me recoiled, afraid of what those memories might reveal. The fire, the pain, the promises broken and kept in shadows. But another part, the part buried deep beneath confusion and fear, ached for the truth, for a connection, for understanding, for an answer to the questions that had haunted me since I stepped through that door. I hesitated, and then, slowly, almost without realizing it, I reached out and took her hand. Because some memories, even the darkest ones, are better faced together. A sound echoed through the house. Footsteps. Other footsteps. Soft, deliberate, growing closer with each passing second, as if someone or something was coming up the stairs. The air grew colder, heavier, charged with an unseen presence. Then voices, whispering my name in unison, a chorus of eerie murmurs that seemed to swirl around me, filling every corner of the room. The sound was both distant and impossibly close, as if the walls themselves were speaking. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat louder than the last, drowning out the whispers, but never quite silencing them. I wanted to run, to hide, but my feet felt rooted to the floor, trapped between fear and fascination. Because whatever was coming wasn't alone, and it was waiting for me. The last thing I remember is closing my eyes. Darkness swallowed me whole, and for a moment I felt nothing but silence, a void where time seemed to stop. When I opened them again, the world was different. The air was thick with a heavy stillness, and the smoke still danced lazily on the ceiling, curling like ghostly fingers reaching out from the past. I looked down at my hand. The ring on my finger, once gleaming, was now covered in ash, dull and cold against my skin. It felt like a symbol of something lost, something burned away, but never fully gone. A reminder that I was caught between two worlds. One I thought was mine, and another that haunted every corner of my existence. And in that moment, I understood. Whatever this was, whatever had happened, I wasn't coming back the same.